The history of Dungeons & Dragons is fraught with uncertainty and debate, and I'm not going to address much of that in this video, but we are going to look at 2 new books about the origins of D&D to see if we can learn anything fun. Because I'm Bob, this is where we learn how to have more fun playing RPGs together, and this is not a sponsored video, but I did get both these books for free from their respective publishers, the first one being Wizards of the Coast. And I don't know if you've heard, but they got a little trigger happy with copyright strikes recently, so I'm going to be really careful about what I show from this book, The Making of Original Dungeons & Dragons 1970 to 1977. First off, this book is freaking huge, hardcover, 576 pages, thick, glossy paper, stitch bound, and not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 ribbons. Yeah, this puppy's built like a dictionary and will definitely survive the next 50 years of D&D. It comes with this papery sleeve that probably won't, but the actual cover is this nice fabric with the D&D ampersand on the front, logo on the spine, and Castle Blackmoor on the back. Beautiful. I kind of hate it when books come with these things though. What's the point? But it also comes with this cool insert, and I really think this side of it is just for show, but it's an OD&D character sheet, and it's awesome that you can pretty much use this thing for 5e today. Anyway, the other side of this is the blurb that they want us to look at. So, Dungeons & Dragons is a beloved hobby, a pop culture juggernaut, and one of the most influential games in the world. True. But where did it begin? How was it conceived, and what did early fans see firsthand in this game, which spawned an entire genre of hobby entertainment? Great questions, honestly, because anyone who has read OD&D knows it's pretty difficult to decipher. The Making of Original Dungeons & Dragons 1970 to 1977 is a trove of unpublished historical artifacts and first printings that illustrate D&D's history. Gary Gygax's never-before-seen first draft of D&D is inside, along with the earliest published writings that became the iconic original D&D box set and its supplements. Each document is introduced and woven into the story by one of the game's foremost historians, John Peterson. Alright, now I will show you some things from the inside while I'm talking, but I kind of need to focus this review on debunking that blurb. Yes, there are letters in here that are not public as far as I know. There are also some fascinating typewritten accounts and fanzine articles from Gygax and his peers that I've never seen before. Seriously, the standout part of this book to me, something I had never seen or even heard of that was also very interesting, was the first piece in here, Gygax's contributions to a 1969 zine called Thangorodrim, where he first wrote about the chromatic dragons, which would later make their way into D&D, and like how stabbing a blue dragon with an iron weapon will result in execution. It's just really cool stuff. However, out of the 576 pages in this book, roughly 440 of these pages are scans or versions of documents that are publicly available. So I would not personally call this a trove of unpublished artifacts. It includes a copy of Chainmail, the miniature wargaming rules by Gygax and Jeff Perrin, which helped David Arneson write the world's first fantasy campaign. But Chainmail is currently available as a PDF on DriveThruRPG for just a couple bucks. Same goes for the original D&D White Box set reproduced here. Same for the OD&D Greyhawk supplement, the Blackmoor supplement, and Eldritch Wizardry. Weirdly, this history book leaves out OD&D number 4, Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, even though that one is also available on DriveThruRPG, and some of these OD&D books are even available for print on demand if you want a physical copy. So together, these game books that you can get pretty cheap elsewhere make up about 330 pages, over half of this history book. But I will give credit to the fact that these scans, the ones in this book, are all first printings as far as I can tell, some of them including notes in the margins, so it is still cool for serious collectors. But then, the other 110 pages that I mentioned cover the quote-unquote never-before-seen first draft of D&D, and I'll let you in on a little secret. This draft of D&D is 100% free, legally. It is part of the public record stored in the National Archives because it was included as evidence in a court case between Gary Gygax and David Arneson when they were butting heads in the 1980s. So down in the description, you can find a link to an article with instructions on how to request a copy of this same D&D draft from the archives. But again, the one in this book does have a bunch of marginalia from Gygax and Arneson, so I'm not sure if it's the same copy in here in the public record. Nonetheless, this leaves about 40 pages of art with some intriguing commentary from the historians who put this book together, and about 90 pages of less readily available historical documents, including those Great Worm zine articles that I said are very cool, excerpts about medieval weapons and armor, excerpts from the Strategic Review, which helped explain how to actually play the game, and from the outdoor survival game used for the overland travel portion of OD&D, and a few personal notes on David Arneson's Blackmoor setting where fantasy role-playing began. Therefore, if you're just in it for the game content, you can save a ton of money by getting that material on Drive4RPG, affiliate links below. But if you want a gorgeously presented historical record that compiles all the first printing game materials and harder to find documents and historical commentary all in one giant tome, then you will probably love the Making of Original Dungeons & Dragons 1970 to 1977. And hey, if you're liking this video, give it a thumbs up, and let's check out book number 2, Blackmoor Foundations, History, Maps, and Lore, 1971 to 1985, the early fantasy RPG works of David Arneson, co-creator of Dungeons & Dragons, an official Blackmoor setting. Yeah, that is a super long title, but my only real issue with it is that last line, an official Blackmoor setting, because while it is totally official, produced with the blessing of the Arneson estate, I wouldn't really call this an RPG setting book. It's a history book about the creation of an RPG setting, and at that, arguably the most important setting in the history of RPGs, so let's talk about it. From the blurb on the back, with the emergence of more historical documents, it's undeniable that Dave Arneson pioneered the play methods used in every role-playing game since the birth of Blackmoor in 1971. And don't worry, history nerds, the authors give due credit to David Wesley too. Back to Arneson. His invention is both a new kind of game, like no other in the history, and a complex imaginary world that has come to be known as the first fantasy campaign. Blackmoor Foundations is the most comprehensive collection of ephemera from the early years of Arneson's Blackmoor ever published. It's a treasure trove of gaming history. Sounds familiar, but this time, it's pretty true. Skipping ahead a bit, each set of document reproductions comes with commentary by Griffith M. Morgan III, co-director and writer of the documentary film Secrets of Blackmoor. He guides you through the complexity of Arneson's creation, including its game history and world lore. So, the book itself, soft cover, 110 pages, matte paper, perfect bound, no ribbons. And this opening line from Arneson's own campaign overview is just perfect. The medieval project is slightly more complicated since it is partially fiction and has to run itself on the basis of player availability. Yeah, over 50 years later, and player availability is still the most challenging part of running these games. But like I mentioned earlier, this overview and all the documents and commentary in here aren't laid out such that they would be easy for another game master, or at least for me to pick up and run in this setting, even with all the awesome maps that come next, like this super early map of the Blackmoor region, more detailed region maps, several town maps of Blackmoor, and some isometric region maps that were super cool to see because I made like the exact same thing for my first campaign as a player. There's also a few notices from Arneson's Corner of the Tabletop fanzine. There's a character sheet from a different campaign, just for an example of what character sheets looked like at this time, and then a bunch more documents that were only uncovered in the last year. So quite literally, never before seen documents about the early history and development of Dungeons & Dragons, just saying. And the first one is nuts. It's Arneson writing a fictional tale about how he himself, David Arneson, ends up in Blackmoor? Apparently their group would sometimes portray themselves in these games. I don't know, but it's fascinating, and these session notes, for lack of a better term, take up a lot of this book, going on to describe firsthand what Arneson himself and his players were doing in Blackmoor. including the dungeon, which is the very first fantasy role-playing game dungeon ever created. So overall, the Blackmoor book is far more narrow in scope than the OD&D book, and it has a much more simple presentation, and while it does not include the actual OD&D Blackmoor supplement owned by Wizards of the Coast, most of the materials in this Blackmoor book are not available anywhere else, except some of it may be shown and discussed on the publisher's own blog, but then this book is still the only way to get it in print. So if you want to pick up either book or the OD&D materials we talked about, you can use the affiliate links below, and if you already own either of these books, please feel free to share your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you to the Bob World Builder patrons for supporting what I do, and keep building.